San Francisco, 1967, not the San Francisco of the Summer of Love photographs that will appear in magazines 6 months from now, the ones with flowers and painted faces, and the specific optimisms of a generation that believes the world is about to become something different. Not that San Francisco, this is the San Francisco that exists underneath that story, the one that has been here longer and will be here after the photographs fade. The working city, the city of neighborhoods that have their own internal logic, their own economies, their own understanding of who belongs and what belonging means. Chinatown sits at the base of Nob Hill, compressed into 24 blocks that contain the highest population density of any neighborhood in the United States. It is not a district in the tourist sense. Not yet, not fully, not in the way it will eventually become. It is a living community, functional and layered, operating with the specific efficiency of a place that has learned to use every available foot of space, because the space is not generous, and the population that depends on it is not small. The streets run narrow, the buildings press close on both sides, their upper floors hung with signs in Cantonese that have nothing to offer a person who cannot read them. The ground floors are open, restaurants, herbalists, grocers, import merchants, the specific commerce of a community that imports what it needs and exports almost nothing except the labor it provides to the wider city that surrounds it, but has never fully opened to it. On a Tuesday afternoon in October, the market street is at its fullest. The vendors have been at their positions since early morning, the same positions, the same faces, the same precise geography of a street market that has organized itself through repetition rather than regulation. The air carries the layered smell of serious food preparation at scale, roasting duck fat, the clean brightness of fresh ginger, star anise warming in a wok somewhere above street level, the specific green sharpness of vegetables that were on a truck 3 hours ago and are now on a table waiting to be bought. Underneath all of it, the ambient warmth of a street that has been absorbing the work of many people for many hours, the particular density of a place where effort is continuous and ordinary and never performed for anyone's approval. The Noodle cart sits at the corner of Grant Avenue and Sacramento Street. It is not a temporary structure. It has been at this corner for 11 years. The same cart, the same operator, a man in his 60s whose name the regulars know and whose schedule the neighborhood has incorporated into its own routines. The way a neighborhood incorporates any reliable fixture, the cart is approximately 4 feet wide, 3 feet deep, constructed from wood and steel in the specific improvised way of things that were built to last rather than built to look a particular way. The front serves customers. The back, the narrow working space between the rear of the cart and the wall of the building behind it, is where the operator stores his supplies, manages his stock, conducts the private business of running a food operation in a space the size of a large wardrobe. On this Tuesday afternoon, the back of the Noodle cart contains 2 things, stock and Bruce Lee. He arrived at the cart 40 minutes ago, not with any particular plan, not with the intention of being at this specific location, at this specific time, in order for this specific story to happen. He arrived because it was Tuesday afternoon and he was in San Francisco and he was hungry, and the Noodle cart at Grant and Sacramento makes something with pork and green onion that he has been thinking about since the last time he was in this city. He arrived, ordered, exchanged a few words with the cart's operator in Cantonese that produced a reaction in the older man that is somewhere between warmth and the particular pleasure of being spoken to correctly in your own language by someone you did not expect to speak it, and moved to the back of the cart with his bowl, because the back of the cart is where the food is actually made, and the smell is better, and there is a wooden crate to sit on, and nobody back here is looking at him. He is 26 years old. He weighs 135 pounds. He is wearing dark trousers and a plain shirt, the ordinary clothes of an ordinary Tuesday, the clothes of a man who has come to a neighborhood to eat noodles, not to be seen eating noodles. His hair is pushed back from his forehead in the specific way it goes when he has been moving through the city with enough purpose to generate warmth. His hands, wrapped around the bowl, look ordinary. They are not ordinary. They are the result of 13 years of daily training that began when he was 13 years old in Hong Kong under a man named IP Man and has not stopped since. He is eating and thinking. What he is thinking about is not, in this moment, martial arts. He is thinking about a philosophical problem he has been working on for 3 weeks, the question of what separates a technique from a principle, whether a technique is always an expression of a principle, or whether technique can exist independently of principle, and what the practical implications of that distinction are for a teaching methodology. He has a notebook in his back pocket with 6 pages of notes on this question, written in a handwriting that compresses a great deal of content into a small space, because he has never had the patience for large handwriting. He is working through a section of the argument that he cannot yet resolve. He hears the strongman before he sees him. The sound arrives in layers. First, the volume, a voice projecting at the specific amplitude of outdoor performance, not conversation, not argument, but the trained projection of a man who has learned to fill a public space with sound, the way a performer learns to fill a theatre. The sound travels down Grant Avenue from the north and reaches the Noodle cart approximately 8 seconds before the body it belongs to does. Second, the language, Russian first, a sequence of sounds that carry, even at this distance and to someone who does not speak Russian, the specific cadence of a challenge. Challenge has a cadence that is independent of language. The rhythm of it, declarative, rising at specific intervals, designed to provoke response, is recognizable in any tongue. Then English, approximate and emphatic, the translation of a man who knows that the performance requires comprehension from its audience, even if the performer and the audience share nothing else. Third, the footsteps. Heavy, direct, unhurried, the gait of a man who has not adjusted his pace for a crowded street, because the crowd has adjusted for him, the specific percussion of weight distributed across a frame that is significantly larger than the average, moving at the pace of a man who has never needed to hurry, because hurrying implies that the situation is beyond his management, and nothing in his experience has yet been beyond his management. Bruce Lee sets his bowl on the edge of the wooden crate. He does not stand up. He does not lean around the side of the cart to look. He listens. And in the listening, in the 12 seconds between the first arrival of that voice and the moment the footsteps stop approximately 10 feet from the back of the noodle cart, he builds complete physical assessment of the man attached to the sounds. Weight, somewhere between 220 and 250 pounds. He can calculate this from the sound signature of the footsteps on pavement, the specific combination of impact force and duration that a body of significant mass produces when it moves with confidence rather than aggression. 235 pounds, probably, possibly 240. Frame wide and low, the kind of mass that has been built for stability rather than mobility. The center of gravity carried low and broad. The specific architecture of a man whose training has prioritized the ability to generate and withstand force over the ability to change direction quickly. Powerful through the first 3 feet of forward movement, significantly slower through the next 3. Speed profile, the advance will be direct and committed. A man of this build and this specific kind of confidence, the confidence of someone who has won the same way many times, will move in a straight line because straight lines have always been sufficient. The commitment of the advance will be its greatest asset. It will also, under the right circumstances, be its greatest liability. Technique, strength-based, forward pressure dominant. He is not a martial artist in the systematic sense. He is a performer of strength, a tradition that is real and ancient and produces genuine physical capability, but a capability that is built for the direct application of force rather than the geometric management of force. He has not trained to respond to redirection because nothing he has encountered has required him to. Bruce Lee picks up his bowl again. He finishes the noodles. He is not afraid. He is also not performing fearlessness. The performance of fearlessness is a response to fear, and fear is a response to uncertainty, and he is not uncertain. He has completed the assessment, and the assessment is clear. What is about to happen is not complicated. It is a geometry problem, and the geometry problem has a solution, and the solution requires approximately 14 seconds to execute. What he is, if anything, is mildly curious, in the specific way that a man who has spent 13 years studying how force moves between bodies is curious when presented with a genuinely interesting specimen of force, looking for a direction to move in. He sets the bowl down. He waits. The strong man stops in front of the noodle cart. He is visible now, visible to the market street, visible to the vendors who have found reasons to slow their work without stopping it entirely, visible to the community members who are moving through the street on their own errands and have now, without quite deciding to, stopped moving. He is exactly what the voice suggested, a large man, significantly large, with the specific physical presence that the body produces when it has been trained for 15 years to generate and sustain force. He is wearing a shirt that fits poorly across the shoulders in the way that very large shoulders make most shirts fit poorly. His hands are at his sides. His expression is satisfied, the specific satisfaction of a man who has been walking through a street, issuing a challenge and finding no response, and who has learned to interpret silence as confirmation of his own assessment of the situation. He looks at the market street. He looks at the vendors who have slowed their work. He looks at the community members who have stopped moving. He looks at the noodle cart. He does not look behind the noodle cart. He issues the challenge again, louder this time, the volume of a man who has moved his position and wants to ensure that the new position understands what the old position understood. The Russian comes first, full-throated, a sentence that the people on this street cannot translate, but can feel the weight of. Then the English, approximate, emphatic, designed to communicate across the gap of language, using volume and cadence where vocabulary falls short. The strongest man on this street. Show me. The market street is quiet. The vendors do not move. Nobody steps forward. The strong man turns slightly to his left, adjusting to face the densest section of the gathered crowd. His right side now faces the noodle cart. He is close enough that the cart's operator, who has been watching this with the specific stillness of a man who has learned through 60 years of life in this neighborhood, that stillness is often the correct response to things you did not invite, can see the grain of the fabric on his shirt. The strong man takes a breath. He is preparing to issue the challenge a third time. He is enjoying himself. The silence of a crowd that will not meet his eyes is, to a man who has built his life on the public performance of physical dominance, a specific kind of pleasure. He has won already. The only question remaining is whether anyone will step forward to make the winning official. Then the noodle cart operator glances, very briefly, to his left. It is not a significant movement. It is the small, involuntary glance of a man whose peripheral vision has registered something changing behind him, a movement in the narrow space behind the cart that has, until this moment, been still. The strong man does not notice the glance. He does not notice the slight change in the cart operator's expression, the specific combination of recognition and anticipation that crosses a face when the situation resolves itself in an unexpected direction. He does not notice any of this. He is facing the crowd. He is not looking at the left side of the noodle cart. He is not looking at the narrow space between the back of the cart and the wall of the building. He is not looking at the small figure in ordinary Tuesday clothes, who is, at this exact moment, stepping out from that space onto the pavement of Grant Avenue, with a bowl of noodles finished, a geometry problem solved, and 14 seconds to spend. Bruce Lee steps out from behind the left side of the noodle cart. He does not announce himself. He does not speak. He does not position himself theatrically, or adopt a stance that signals what he is, or what he is about to do. He steps out and stands on the pavement and looks at the strong man with the same quality of direct, complete, unperformed attention he brings to everything. The attention of a man who finds the world genuinely interesting, and is currently finding this particular corner of it very interesting indeed. The crowd sees him first. The specific sound the crowd makes is not the sound that 600 charity event guests made when the prison inmate pointed at a small man in the front row. That was the sound of disbelief, finding its social expression. Laughter, the audible release of tension through humor. This is different. This is a Chinatown crowd. This street knows things that a civic auditorium in Chicago does not know. Some of these faces know this face. Not all of them, but enough. Enough for the knowledge to travel through the gathered crowd in the specific way that important information travels through a community that communicates in close proximity, not as an announcement, as a quality of attention that shifts and spreads and produces a silence that is the opposite of the charity event silence. Not disbelief, recognition. The crowd goes quiet. The vendors who had slowed their work stop it entirely. The community members who had stopped moving do not start again. 43 people on this section of Grant Avenue hold their breath in the same moment without coordinating it. The strong man hears the silence change. Silence has texture. A crowd that is silent because nobody will answer a challenge has a specific texture. The texture of avoidance, of collective self-removal from a situation, of 40 people independently deciding that the correct response is to be somewhere else, even while remaining in the same location. He knows this texture. He has produced it in 14 cities. The silence that has just replaced it has a different texture entirely. It is the silence of attention, 43 people directing their focus at a single point. with the kind of collective intentionality that a crowd produces when something significant is about to happen and everyone present knows it. He turns. He sees Bruce Lee standing 8 feet away, looking at him. He takes in the image, 135 pounds, plain shirt, dark trousers, hands at his sides, relaxed, fingers slightly open. The face of a young man who has stepped out from behind a piece of street furniture and is now standing on the pavement of Grant Avenue with an expression that contains no fear, no aggression, no performance of any kind, just attention. The strongman processes this image for 3 seconds. He has challenged all of Chinatown. Chinatown has sent him this. He looks at the crowd looks back. He looks at the noodle cart. He looks at the man. He looks at the distance between them, 8 feet of San Francisco pavement, worn smooth by years of foot traffic and market work, reflecting the afternoon light in the dull way of stone that has absorbed a great deal of use. He makes a decision. The decision is wrong, but he does not know that yet. He has 14 seconds before he does. 8 feet. That is the distance between them now. 8 feet of Grant Avenue pavement, worn smooth by years of market foot traffic, reflecting the October afternoon light in the flat, dull way of stone that has absorbed more use than it was originally designed for. 8 feet between a man who has spent 15 years building the most publicly visible physical reputation, available to a traveling strongman in 6 countries, and a man who spent the last 40 minutes eating noodles behind a cart and thinking about the difference between technique and principle. The strongman is looking at Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is looking at the strongman. The crowd is looking at both of them and not making a sound. This is the moment the strongman misreads. He reads the silence of the crowd as the silence he has been producing all afternoon, the silence of avoidance, of collective self-removal, of a group of people deciding independently that the correct response to his presence is to be somewhere else emotionally, even while remaining physically present. He has produced this silence in 14 cities. He recognizes it. He is comfortable in it. He is wrong. The silence he is standing in now is not that silence. It is the silence of 43. People who know something he doesn't, who have understood something about the image in front of them that he cannot yet read because he does not have the information required to read it. It is the silence of a community holding its breath, not out of fear, but out of the specific anticipatory stillness of witnesses, who know that what is about to happen is significant, and who want to be fully present for it. The strongman does not have this information. He is only the image, a small man, 8 feet away, looking at him. He decides the image means what it looks like. He advances. Here is what the strongman knows about the next 3 seconds. He knows that he weighs 240 pounds, and that the man in front of him weighs something in the range of 130 to 140, a difference of approximately 100 pounds, which in every physical encounter he has ever had has been a difference sufficient to determine the outcome before the first contact is made. He knows that he has covered ground like this, 8 feet, direct forward pressure, full commitment, hundreds of times in professional performance and in the genuine confrontations that preceded his professional career, and that the result of that advance has always been the same. He knows that his hands, which have bent iron bars and pulled vehicles and broken chains across his chest, produce a force on contact that human bodies of normal scale are not designed to absorb without consequence. He knows all of this with the complete certainty of a man whose knowledge has been confirmed by every piece of evidence his life has so far provided. What he does not know, what he has never been required to know, is that force can be borrowed, that the commitment of an advance, the full investment of mass and momentum in a specific direction, is not only a weapon, under the right conditions, applied with the right understanding of geometry, it is also the mechanism of its own defeat. He does not know this because nothing he has encountered has ever shown it to him. He covers the first 4 feet in 2 steps. Bruce Lee moves. The movement is not what the strongman expected, and it is not what the crowd expected, and it is, in its specific geometry, not what anyone who was not trained to understand it could have predicted from the outside. Bruce Lee does not step back. He does not step sideways. He steps forward and inside. A single movement that is lateral and forward simultaneously, a diagonal that takes him off the direct line of the advance while closing the distance between them rather than opening it, so that when the strongman's forward pressure arrives at its intended destination, the destination is no longer occupied. 3 seconds. The strongman's advance completes into empty space. His momentum, 240 pounds committed fully forward at the specific velocity of a man who has closed ground like this hundreds of times, is now in a position that his training has never required him to manage. The momentum is real, the direction is fixed. The body it belongs to is moving through a space the person it was directed at is no longer standing in. Bruce Lee's left forearm meets the inside of the strongman's right arm, not at the wrist, not at the hand, at the inside of the forearm, at the point where the arm has reached full extension and the direction of the force it carries is committed and cannot be changed without the investment of time that the next 2 seconds do not contain. The contact is not a block. A block is the meeting of two forces, the direct opposition of one vector with another. Between these two bodies, a block is a losing proposition. The strongman's forward force, backed by 240 pounds of committed momentum, does not lose a direct opposition contest with 135 pounds of resistance. This is not a block, this is a redirect. A single lateral pressure applied at the exact point of maximum extension, at the moment when the direction is fixed and the commitment is complete, and the geometry of the advance is created, in the space beside and slightly behind the advancing arm, a path that the strongman's own momentum is now perfectly positioned to travel. His right shoulder follows the arm. The shoulder follows because the arm is attached to it, and the lateral pressure on the arm has changed the direction of the force the arm is carrying, and the shoulder is the next link in the chain of the body's connected structure. When the direction of force in one link changes, the adjacent links follow. This is not a principle of martial arts, it is a principle of physics. Bruce Lee has understood it for 13 years. The strongman is understanding it now, in real time, in the specific way that the body understands things before the mind does, through the sensation of his own structure moving in a direction he did not choose. His torso follows the shoulder. 5 seconds. Bruce Lee's right hand finds the back of the strongman's left shoulder. Not a grip, a placement. The distinction is the entire principle. A grip applies force, a placement applies direction. The strongman's body is already moving. It has mass, momentum, committed energy, in a specific direction that has been modified by the redirect. Bruce Lee does not fight this energy. He accepts it as completely and without resistance as water accepts a stone thrown into it, and he gives it a final destination. The destination is down and forward. 7 seconds. The strongman's left knee meets the pavement of Grant Avenue. The sound it produces is significant, not the controlled, rehearsed impact of a training fall, not the cooperative descent of a student who has agreed to be taken to the ground, but the genuine sound of 240 pounds of committed momentum arriving at a hard surface through a path it did not choose. The sound travels down the street in both directions. The vendors who stop their work do not start it again. The community members who stopped moving do not move. The strongman's right knee follows the left. He is kneeling on the pavement of Grant Avenue, 8 feet from the Noodle cart, in the center of a market street in Chinatown on a Tuesday afternoon in October. 14 seconds. Bruce Lee is standing where he started. He has not moved more than 2 feet in any direction. His shirt is undisturbed. His hands are at his sides. His expression has not changed from the expression he wore when he stepped out from behind the cart. The same direct, unperformed, completely present quality of attention, now directed at the strongman on the pavement in front of him, with neither triumph nor performance, nor any quality that requires an audience to complete it. The street is completely silent. The strongman is on his knees, and he is doing something that his body has very rarely been required to do in 15 years of professional strength performance. He is processing an outcome he did not produce. This is not a simple process. It is not the processing of a man who has been surprised. Surprise resolves quickly, integrates into the existing understanding, files as an anomaly, and moves on. This is the processing of a man whose existing understanding does not contain a category for what has just happened. The system that has successfully predicted every previous outcome. The system built from 15 years of confirmed evidence that his mass and his momentum and his commitment are sufficient, has just produced a prediction that reality contradicted completely, in 14 seconds, on a market street in San Francisco. The system is searching for the error. It cannot find it yet because the error is not in the execution. He did what he always does. He committed fully. He covered the ground. He applied the force. The error is not in the technique. The error is in the assumption beneath the technique, the assumption that force applied in a straight line at sufficient magnitude will always arrive where it was directed. The assumption is wrong, not always. In most situations against most people, the assumption is correct, but it has a boundary, and the boundary is standing 8 feet away on Grant Avenue with his hands at his sides. The strongman looks up. Bruce Lee is looking at him, not with triumph, not with the specific expression of a man who has just won something and wants the audience to know it, with the same quality of attention, direct, complete without performance, that he brought to the moment he stepped out from behind the cart, and to the moment the strongman began his advance, and to every moment of the 14 seconds between them, the attention of a man for whom this encounter is simply what it was, a geometry problem that required 14 seconds to complete. The strongman looks at the crowd looks back, he looks at the noodle cart, he looks at the pavement under his knees, the ordinary pavement of an ordinary market street, worn smooth by years of foot traffic, containing nothing remarkable except the fact that he is currently kneeling on it. Bruce Lee extends his hand. The gesture is not performed for the crowd. It is not a statement or a display or a generosity offered for an audience. It is simply what comes next, when an encounter is finished and the other person is on the ground. What comes next is the hand. Bruce Lee does not decide this. It does not require decision. It is as automatic and as unconsidered as the geometry of the 14 seconds was deliberate and precise. The strongman looks at the hand for a long moment. Then he does something that nobody on this street was expecting. He bows. Not a performance bow, not the theatrical bow of a man who has bowed to audiences in 6 countries at the end of a successful demonstration. Not the bow of public relations or social management. A genuine bow, deep, deliberate, from a man who comes from a culture with its own ancient tradition of acknowledging capability, who has just encountered capability that his own tradition has no adequate category for, and who is honest enough and serious enough about his own craft to recognize the encounter for what it was. He bows to the pavement of Grant Avenue in Chinatown, and then he rises, and he takes the extended hand, and Bruce Lee pulls him to his feet with the specific, precise economy of every other movement in the last 14 seconds. Exactly the force required, nothing extra, nothing performed. The strongman stands. He is 240 pounds on 2 feet on a market street, and he is, in some way that does not yet have a complete name in his experience, different from the man who walked down this street, issuing a challenge 40 minutes ago. Not smaller, not diminished, different, the way a man is different after the boundary of his understanding has been extended in a direction he did not know the boundary had. The extension is not comfortable. Extensions of genuine understanding rarely are, but it is real, and he knows it is real, and he is, for all the difficulty of the moment, sufficiently honest with himself to not pretend otherwise. He looks at Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee looks back. Between them, in the specific silence of 2 people who have just shared something that words are inadequate for, something is acknowledged, not in language, not in gesture beyond the handshake that is still completing, in the quality of the attention they give each other, mutual, direct, without the social scaffolding that most human acknowledgements require. Then the strongman nods once. He turns. He walks back down Grant Avenue in the direction he came from. The crowd watches him go. Nobody speaks until he has rounded the corner at the northern end of the block and disappeared from the street entirely. The silence holds for 1 more second after he has gone. The specific silence of a gathered crowd that has witnessed something significant and has not yet decided what to do with that fact. Then, slowly, the market street returns to itself. The vendors resume their work. The community members resume their movement. The layered sounds of a working food market, the specific percussion of knives on cutting boards, the hiss of oil in woks above street level, the Cantonese of transaction and conversation, reassemble themselves around the space where the silence was, covering it the way water covers a stone when it is dropped in, closing over the surface until the surface is continuous again. The noodle cart operator looks at Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee looks at him. The older man says something in Cantonese that is brief and quiet and does not need to be translated for its meaning to be clear. Bruce Lee responds with equal brevity. He moves back to the wooden crate behind the cart. He sits. He takes the notebook from his back pocket. He finds the page where he left the philosophical problem, the question of technique and principle, the 6 pages of notes in the compressed handwriting that fits a great deal of content into a small space. He reads the last paragraph he wrote. He picks up his pen. He writes 1 sentence that resolves the section he could not resolve before the strongman arrived. Then he keeps writing. The story travels through Chinatown the way important things travel through close communities. Not as a broadcast, not as a newspaper item, not as an announcement, as a quality of knowledge that moves between people who are present and people who trust the people who are present, carried in conversation and in the specific shorthand of a community that has learned to communicate significant information in small gestures and brief sentences, because the walls of a dense neighborhood are not thick and some things are better known quietly than loudly. By the evening of that Tuesday, 30 people know what happened on Grant Avenue at the corner of Sacramento Street. By the following weekend, the number is closer to 100. By the end of the month, everyone in Chinatown who would want to know knows, and the story has accumulated the specific weight that genuine witnessed events accumulate when they pass through enough honest mouths. Not inflated, not dramatized, but deepened, the meaning growing more complete with each telling, not because the facts change, but because the people telling them understand them better each time. The Strongman does not appear on Grant Avenue again. He completes his engagement at Fisherman's Wharf and leaves San Francisco at the end of the week. Whatever he carries with him from the 14 seconds on the pavement, the specific revision of understanding that a man undergoes when the boundary of his knowledge is extended without his permission in front of an audience, he carries it privately, in the way that genuinely important things are often carried, without announcement, without a story attached to it that anyone else gets to hear. The noodle cart is at its corner the following Tuesday, and the Tuesday after that, and every Tuesday that follows for the next 11 years, until the operator retires and the cart is replaced by a fixed stall that occupies the same corner but does not have a working space behind it, large enough for a wooden crate and a young man with a notebook and 40 minutes and a bowl of pork noodles. Bruce Lee is in Los Angeles within the week, moving toward the next necessary location in a life that keeps finding them. He does not tell the story publicly. He does not use it as a teaching example in his classes. He does not record it in the notebooks that will eventually be published and studied. It lives in Chinatown, in the memories of 43 people who were on Grant Avenue that afternoon, carried the way the community carries the things that matter to it, quietly, accurately, with the specific care of people who understand that not everything that is real needs to be announced. Here is what the story is about. Not the 14 seconds. The 14 seconds are the surface, the visible, memorable, repeatable surface of an event that has a deeper structure underneath it. The surface is real, the surface matters, but the surface is not where the meaning lives. The meaning lives in the noodle cart, specifically in the fact that the answer to the challenge came from behind it. The Strongman designed his challenge to produce a specific kind of response. The challenge was issued from the center of the street, at volume, in the specific vocabulary of a traveling performer who has refined his challenge over 15 years and 14 cities into its most effective form. The challenge is a frame, a structure that defines the terms of the encounter before the encounter begins, that positions the Strongman at the center and everyone else at the periphery, that makes the only available response to the challenge the response of stepping forward into a confrontation on terms the challenger has set. Bruce Lee did not step into the frame, he stepped out from behind the furniture. This is the principle that the 14 seconds illustrates. Not speed, not chain punches or redirects, or the specific biomechanics of a smaller body managing the momentum of a larger one. The principle is this: the most effective response to a challenge is not always to meet the challenge on its own terms. The challenge is designed to be met on its own terms. The frame it creates is the strongest part of it, stronger than the physical capability behind it, stronger than the reputation that precedes it, stronger than the 14 cities and 15 years of confirmation. The frame is the challenge's deepest weapon, and the frame has a boundary. The boundary is the edge of the space the challenge was designed to control. Behind the noodle cart is outside that space. Bruce Lee did not plan to be behind the noodle cart when the Strongman arrived. He was there because he was hungry. But the fact that the response came from behind the furniture rather than from the front of the crowd, unhurried, unannounced, without the performance that the challenge was designed to provoke, changed the nature of the encounter before the first step was taken. It denied the Strongman the opening he depended on. Not his strength, not his mass, not his momentum, his frame. The challenge lost its frame before it made contact. The 14 seconds were not the story. The 14 seconds were the confirmation of a decision that was made when Bruce Lee set down his bowl and stepped out from the left side of the cart, quietly, without announcement, from a direction nobody was watching. Jeet Kune Do is often described as a fighting system. It is more accurate to describe it as a philosophy of response, a way of meeting every encounter, physical and otherwise, by refusing to accept the terms the encounter was designed to impose, and instead finding the geometry that the encounter's design cannot account for. The strongman brought 240 pounds of committed force. Bruce Lee brought the understanding that committed force has a geometry, and that geometry has a solution, and the solution is not the meeting of force with force, but the finding of the angle from which the force's own commitment becomes the instrument of its redirection. He found the angle behind a noodle cart on a Tuesday afternoon. He always finds the angle. The question the story leaves, the one that belongs to you and not to Grant Avenue in 1967, is about your own challenges, not the ones that come from outside, the ones you face every day in the specific circumstances of your own life, the challenges that arrive with their own frame, their own terms, their own assumption that the only way to respond is to step forward into the space they have prepared and fight on the ground they have chosen. The question is whether you are willing to find the noodle cart, not as evasion, not as retreat, as the specific, deliberate act of refusing the frame and finding the angle that the frame was not designed to account for, the angle from which your response arrives unhurried, unannounced, from a direction nobody was watching. Bruce Lee weighed 135 pounds. The strongman weighed 240. The difference was not in the pounds, it was in who understood the geometry. The geometry is available to anyone willing to spend the time behind the cart.